Hey friends, Andy here from Raphah, and I just want to share with you a few thoughts that I've had recently about trying to balance making music with other areas of life. Primarily for me, that's my family life and my work. Now there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so many days in the week. And people often say to me, I don't know how you fit everything in, with your music, with work, with family. I'm also in the middle of doing a master's degree, and sometimes I scratch my head and think I don't actually know where time is coming from and how I'm able to juggle everything. Now that's not by any means to say that I get it right, and trying to strike that balance and get priorities straight is very difficult, particularly when there's so many things that we want to do and have to do in any given week. And so I've just got a few things to share, really as a reminder to myself more than anything, but hopefully you'll also find value in these things, of ways that I try to manage my time and fit everything in. So let's go. One thing that I do to more efficiently manage my time is to try and plan ahead. That's not something that I had to do when I first started out with Raphah, because it was very much a hobby. I was testing the water, I was just making music that I felt like making whenever I felt like making it. But as it's progressed, as it's grown, I've had to become much more organised, because I'm now working with lots more collaborators, and that's brilliant, but it requires a bit of forward planning to get release dates sorted. And what I generally try to do now is plan up to 6 months in advance to make sure that I'm producing music that can be released later on in the year, that I can schedule things in properly to allow for playlist pitching, getting artwork done, getting masters produced, and getting everything lined up ready for the release date. And that 6 months is now gradually stretching out to the point I'm now actually planning almost a year in advance. That has the advantage that I can then forecast how busy I'm going to be in certain areas of the year, which is vital because there are different seasons and different busy periods in other areas of my life. So it helps me just to manage what's coming over the hill. Another way to better manage time is to be organised. And I do quite like being organised, because it helps me to then free up headspace to actually create. If I'm not organised, I find that I'm more easily distracted and I can't focus on the task in hand, which is to make music. And so my organisational system is actually fairly rudimentary. I have a spreadsheet on which I track all of my current projects in progress, my releases, and at what stage they're at. And then even more rudimentary, which is quite 90s, I use a whiteboard, which is on the wall in my studio. And that's just, I find, a really useful way of being able to, at a glance, see what I'm working on, what needs to be done, and I have a little to-do list on that board so I can keep up to date and not fall behind with any deadlines or things that I'm working towards. At the beginning of every year now, normally in January, I'll sit down and I'll write myself a year's plan as to what goals I have for the year in terms of how much music I want to put out, what sort of projects I'm looking to release, who I want to work with, and a rough, I hesitate to say target, because I don't really like targets and I don't want to get swept away in just counting beans and looking at stats, but the rough trajectory that I expect to see that year in terms of growth with streaming numbers, social media contacts and followers and things like that. And then at the end of the year, I like to use that to review where I've been, how that's progressed, and then plan for the next year. Something that I find really useful to do is to have a fairly standardized workflow. Now that could, in some respects, constrain creativity, but I find by having templates set up on Logic, which is the DAW that I use, it helps me to get straight into creating rather than spending 15, 20, 30 minutes setting up a new project, finding instruments, getting plugins all sorted. And so by utilising that system, having templates, I find it really improves my productivity because I can sit down and go straight into it. In the same way, I'm fortunate enough to have a dedicated office studio space, and I've arranged that so that all my equipment is readily accessible. Guitars, keyboards, where my desk is set up, my pedals are all laid out and plugged in, and with the flick of a couple of switches I can be up and running very quickly. If it takes you 10-15 minutes to set up and then another 10 or 15 minutes to set up your project, that could be the only time you've got that day to create, especially if you're a busy person. That can be the case with me sometimes. I've only got a half an hour window, and so I'd really need to get down and get stuck in straight away. In the same way with workflow, and I've mentioned this in a previous video about how to start out in making ambient music, which I will link in the description if you want to watch that one, is being really focused on getting down to actually making the music in the first place, and probably even more importantly is finishing off those projects. And that's something that can be quite a discipline, especially if you're a creative person, or perhaps you're a perfectionist and you want to get things 100% right before you think they're ready to release. But that can really slow down your productivity and your creativity. And so by being quite rigid and focused on finishing a project, that can really help to maximize the use of your time, so you're not spending ages and ages and ages on that last 1 or 2% of your project. If you think it's good enough, hit bounce, get it mastered and get it out there. Another really important thing, and I'm very much speaking to myself here, is to avoid getting distracted. That can be very difficult, particularly if you've got a mobile phone within reach and it's going off and you've got other demands on your time. I said I'm fortunate enough to have a dedicated office studio space, but that can have its downsides because I work in there and I also produce music in there. So if I'm doing one, I can often be distracted by the other, no matter what time of day it is. So compartmentalizing that time is really important. Switch off your phone. Try and just be single-minded about what it is you're focusing on then and there. I am awful at trying to multitask, and so if my attention is divided, my creativity and my end product will inevitably be mediocre. I think probably the most important thing is to prioritize. The most important, but also probably the most difficult. There are different seasons in life for different things. In my current season, I'm particularly busy with my work, and I have exams coming up for my master's degree. So that, in terms of my work focus, is taking up a lot of time and beyond the bounds of my normal working hours, which is fine. That's what's expected of me. It's what I'm paid to do, and I want to pass this master's degree, and so that, in terms of work, is the priority. I will always try to keep my family top of the list of priorities. I would love to say I always succeed in doing that, but unfortunately sometimes I let the balance tip and I neglect my family because I'm absorbed in work or music or something else. And so I'm working hard at that, and as a father and a husband, that is something that's extremely important to me, and I'm constantly trying to work to get right. But it is difficult, and prioritizing is not just on a grand scale, it can be in the moment. If I'm working on a piece of music in my studio on the weekend and one of my children wants to do something, go to the park or have a chat with me or watch a film, I have to be quite disciplined in just putting down what I'm working on and giving them the time, because they are the most important. Likewise for my wife, there have and probably will continue to be times where I let myself get carried away with trying to make music when I should be perhaps spending time with her or helping her with things that need to be done in family life. And so it's something that I'm constantly working on and hope to, oh, dog got caught on the fence, to improve at. But if you are in the position where you have a family to take care of in any way, shape or form, I would strongly encourage you to make that number one on your priority list as much as you possibly can. Learn to say no. There's nothing wrong with turning down projects. There's nothing wrong with delaying something that you think you don't have time to do, or if it's going to be detrimental to other areas of your life. Saying no can sometimes be really hard, especially if you think it's a really good opportunity to work with someone you haven't worked with before, to create a piece of music that is really burning on your heart to make. But there will be more opportunities. There always are. What there won't be necessarily are more times to spend with your family. And so, coming back to my previous point about priorities, a lot of that comes down to saying no to certain things and saying yes to the most important things in life. I absolutely love music. I would love to be able to do it as my full-time occupation, and perhaps at some stage that will be possible. But as for now, that's not where I am, and so music sometimes has to take a back seat. That's the way it is, but there'll be different priorities perhaps if it ever does become my full-time occupation, because there's then additional pressures. Speaking of pressures, it's important not to place too many upon yourself. That's something that I am susceptible to doing, partly because I want to do everything and I want to do it well. So give yourself a break. If you're struggling to prioritise, then put some things down for a while. Like for me in this season, I'm not having much spare time to make music, so I'm just having to be kind to myself and say, just put it down. You've got enough booked in for the next few months, and then once this busy season is over, you can pick it up again. So that's really important, because there's no point burning out, getting stressed and losing the love of making music at the cost of your well-being. So I'll end it there because I'm nearly home and I need to get on with doing some work. But thank you for joining me. I hope some of those points have been helpful to you. You've probably got other ideas depending on what stage you're at with your musical career, your family life, your work life. So please do leave a comment, get in touch, let me know what you think so we can carry on this conversation. This channel is primarily to build a community around my music, for me to share some of my insights, some of my process. This video has been a little bit rushed because, in keeping with the theme, I don't have an awful lot of time today. But I'll try to do another one next week in amongst everything else. And until then, take care of yourself and see you soon.